Hi, I'm Tara from Marathon Mates. Are you in a rut and feel like you're going nowhere when running on a treadmill? In this episode, we're going to talk about treadmill running and provide tips and tricks to make the experience better. Are you ready to run? Let's go!
Welcome to the thrilling world of the flying runner, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Hi everyone, welcome back to The Flying Runner. On this episode, we are going to be talking all things treadmill running. For many people, running on a treadmill can be boring and unfulfilling. On this episode, we're going to provide some tips and tricks to remove the dread from the treadmill. Also, in addition to talking about treadmill running, we've got another special little treat for you at the end, so stay tuned. But before we talk about treadmill running, it's always good to see you, my marathon mates, Tony and Tim. How are you both going?
I'm doing well, Tony. How are you going?
Well, yeah, I'm still good. Feeling good. Top of the world. To be honest, the ankle's in a moon boot, so we're just immobilizing it for a couple of weeks to help the recovery. And there's some real mess there where the big bone connects with the ankle bone,
That sounds like a song.
Yeah, it does sound like a song, and that's the worry of my physio. There is a small fracture in the other smaller bone, but that's not necessarily of major concern. It was just the mess that was done where the big bone's jammed into the ankle bone. And for those that are watching on video, you can see but it's just imagine Tony pumping two fists together. That's what ultimately happened, where the big bones and there's cartilage down there, and it's what they call it's like an inconvenience or something. It's but yes, I'm in a moon boot. Currently not in a moon boot because I'm doing a little bit of work around the yard. So, but most of the time trying to be in the moon boot and give the legs some support so I can get back to training. I figured I've got about 3 weeks to rehab and get back into it to give me a 12-week run into Tokyo. So, but more excitedly, and I went to a 40-year high school reunion last night, and well past my bedtime. Got home at midnight. Stroke on midnight, and Sharon said, "Were you worried you were going to turn into a pumpkin?" And yeah, it was just so good. So a shout out to all the class of '83 there from Corinda High. It was absolutely awesome to see everyone, and just in this age of social connection. By the time I'd walked into the room, got our shots, our photo shots, our welcome photo shots as we came in. By the time I was halfway to the bar, 8 people had asked me how my ankle was, and it was just really nice because people obviously can follow what we do, and it was just nice to still have that social connection with people that you shared an experience with going through high school. And it was just a really great night. And one of my good mates, Paul, he said his wife is sort of seeing what Sharon and I do and has suggested that maybe he needs to set himself a new goal and maybe look at a marathon. And I asked him, which one would you do? He said, well, if I'm doing a marathon, I'll do the New York City Marathon because it sounds like it's the best. I said, well, we're doing it next year. Let's book you in. I'll start sending you all the links. And Paul said, no. I said, if I do a marathon, But anyway, great night, and it was just great to see everyone. So, how are you guys? How did you go, Tim? Today we're recording this on the Sunday, just so everyone knows as well. So you've just come off your long run, no doubt, and I've just come off a long night, and a long night for me, well past my bedtime. But and the reason we're doing it on the Sunday is because someone, namely me, is having a birthday tomorrow. So Team Ellis adjusted their scale, their their timeline so that we could do it on a Sunday, so I can go out and have dinner with my wife. So thanks, guys.
No, well, thank you, and happy birthday, Tony, for tomorrow. I know we'll send messages and all the usual things, but happy birthday. And this Sunday thing might be a common thing. We've got to do again the next Sunday as well. We've got an early morning recording session then for our special guests. But our running this week, it's been a little bit quieter during the midweek. We haven't done as many of the sessions we would have normally have done. Listened to the body again. We've had a couple of late nights. Our son finished high school this year, and then all of a sudden we're doing graduation ceremonies in the middle of the week. I had a Christmas party for work, so getting up in the morning was a little bit harder, but that's okay. Better to rest than do anything else. We went to Chermside Park Run yesterday for Park Run, which was great. Getting hot, so we took advantage of our podcast from last week, where we listened to some of the things in there that we said we do, which is slow it down, make sure we're well hydrated, listen to the body, and all those sort of things.
Well, Chermside is also a bit more shady than some of the other park runs in Brisbane, so it has got a lot of shade. So it was a good way to, use that shade side of things as well.
Yep. And then this morning we flew over to Africa, over to Tanzania, and participated in the Kilimanjaro half marathon. And it looks good. But we ran a half marathon on the treadmill in preparation, I guess, for this episode, to give us some more understanding of treadmill running. But largely it was to get us out of the heat of the run out on the course that we normally run, and to do a little bit of something different on our Sunday long run. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But yeah, we actually got to run in Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, for a half marathon this morning on the treadmill. So 2 hours and 23 minutes of running on a treadmill. So
it's not as bad as it sounds, really. It really wasn't. It went really fast.
You're better than me. I did some stationary exercise bike this week, and after 15 minutes, I just feel like I just got to get out of there. It's just so boring. And this afternoon I'm going to jump in the pool and do some aqua running. So that's about the extent of it. But I also find that pretty boring as well. So I might have to have a beer on each end so that I've got a beer on that side, a beer on that side, run across. Yeah, I don't know. I've got to mix it up somehow. So
nothing wrong with that.
Thanks, guys. Let's not have beer too early in the morning, but I guess if it's running in the afternoon, we're okay. Thanks, Tony and Tim. Now let's get to the news.
All
awesome.
Right.
Love that music. Tony, why don't you kick things off this week for us?
Yeah, there's not a lot in the world of marathon news at the moment. Tim's our news hound, and he went sniffing around, and there's not a lot happening. But one that came out of the blue, which came through on his Instagram feed, and both Tim and I saw this, and we're pretty excited. Cameron Avery's running Shanghai next week in the marathon, and he had I think it was a live, but it's now just a recorded video on his Instagram feed where he's talking about the two reasons why he's doing Shanghai. And, the qualifying time, I think he said, Tim, was 2:08 to automatically qualify for the Olympics. He's aiming for a 2:11. So, so I think that's a really big step for him, because, the last time we saw him run was the half marathon at Gold Coast. And he did admirably, ended up on the podium there, and ran his fastest ever time in the half. So it'll be good to see if that translates into what he's been doing for the marathon.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to go all right. I think he said a 2:08 would be a New Zealand national record, and something he's not aiming for at this stage. But he said the other way of qualifying is if you average, I think, a 2:10 pace over two races. I was trying to work it all out, and it was a bit complex how it all works.
Yeah.
And every country sort of does things a little bit different. As we know, the US has just one race. Where everyone who gets a qualifying time goes off into that one race, and the top three then qualify for the Olympics. I know the UK has a very weird qualifying process as well. I think Australia does, and most other countries do as well. But he explained it that you have to get an average of a 2:10 time over two different marathons or thereabouts. So he's aiming for a 2:11, which will help him get there.
Yeah.
and hopefully set him up for that spot in the Olympics. He seems very committed to aiming and getting into that Olympic team.
Yeah, he just seems a really nice guy too. He just seems just a nice guy. There's no other way I can explain it. And really friendly and personable. So we'll endeavour to keep our efforts to get him on the podcast, and we'll keep pestering him. That tends to work sometimes, or he'll just block us, I guess. So, yeah, we love the swoosh man. The interesting thing about US is that it's in Florida this year, the US trials, and they were doing it at 12 o'clock. They were starting the marathon at midday in Florida for trials, and that was all about the TV schedule. And there has been a shift in that, and they are now starting it at 10 o'clock. So I'd imagine it's still pretty hot in Florida at 10 o'clock in the morning. And even though they're in their winter season, or moving into winter season, Florida still gets pretty challenging. It's like a North Queensland style of weather. So
average temps at that time of year in that sort of middle stages of the day are around about 21 to 27 degrees Celsius. It's going to be a warm marathon that they run.
Very much so.
It will be a flattish course. Orlando is a very flat city, very swampy, historically a swampy area. So it'll be fairly flat, but a lot of the North Americans wouldn't be used to running sort of fast in that. And at the end of the day, I don't think they're worried about the times. It's just who comes first, second, and third, and therefore they don't automatically qualify. So, but again, there seems to be a lot of politics in the USA. What do they call it? USATF, USA Track Federation.
Yeah.
And there was all sort of politics around the timing, and then they couldn't work out whether it was to do with TV rights or sponsorship, or whether somebody had paid some money for it or not for that time of the day.
Yeah.
And the athletes were wanting one thing, the organisers were wanting another thing. So lots of politics, but it's good that they've sorted it out somewhat and brought the start time back.
Yeah, probably the ideal start time there is about a 6 o'clock in the morning thing. So there's been some level of compromise, I'd imagine. So
yeah, I know Dopey is run in January each year.
Yeah.
And it's we start at 5:30, I think, for the Dopey marathon, or 5 o'clock. So, and it gets warm. That gets very warm, particularly for the slower runners towards the later stages of the race.
Yeah, very much so. Now, the other news, and this is direct from the news hound himself, Tim, the member federations award from the World Athletics have announced their 2023 member federations awards. And this is really intriguing, to be honest, because it's, when you think of awards, you normally think of individuals, right? And we'll talk about some more individual awards and how they got it wrong a little bit later on. But the six nominations for this are actually federations themselves. So the 6 nominees are Australia, Botswana, Chile, Spain, Thailand, and the USA. And it's, from what I can gather, it is about what they've brought to the year of sport. So in that case, Australia hosted the World Cross Country Championships in Bathurst in February, and that had a lot of kudos. There was a lot of raps on that. Not quite sure what Botswana did, but they continue to work with their athletes is the reason that they've been nominated. Chile hosted the Pan American Games, as well as 5 World Athletic Continental Tour Challenger events. So they've had a big year. Spain, their athletes were successful at the World Athletes Championships in Budapest, winning 5 medals. So that's what created their nomination. Bangkok was the host city for the 25th Asian Athlete Championship. So well done to Thailand and the USA. And you get the feeling the USA would be nominated every year. I've never seen this award before, but you just get the sense. But in another successful year, US athletes claimed 29 medals at the World Athletics Championships. So congratulations to those 6 federations. And it'll be interesting to see which one actually wins out.
I think for Australia as well, Tony, it's not just hosting the cross country, it's their performance in Budapest. It was a best ever for Australian and for the Australian athletics team that was there.
Yeah.
And then throw into that also Sydney Marathon, the increased number of runners in that, the great reception that it had worldwide in the press and the media, and the coverage that it received, as well as obviously being nominated for that Abbott candidate race for the World Marathon Majors, and obviously getting the nomination to host next year's Wander Age Group Championship. So Australia's looking really good as far as its athletes are going and its performances on and off the track. It seems to be, holding itself really well, and hopefully that pays off coming into Paris, and then building up after that to LA, and then ultimately into Brisbane in 2032.
Yeah. And, I think Australia can hold its head very firmly, very high at the moment. So I think we're making some inroads. It's good to see our New Zealand compatriot, Cameron Avery, but have a bit of self-belief that he can go into 2:08. I think we've got Brett Robinson in Australia that can run a 2:08.
Yeah.
So it'll be good to see if we can make a bit of a concerted boost here and really start challenging back into the 2:08. I think if you can hit a 2:05, I think you're in the mix for any of the races, except some of those flat tracks where the bullies just go for the time. But yeah, I call them bullies. They're not bullies, but they just go head out for the time. But I think if they're in a tactical race, I think if you've got 2:05 in your legs and in your training and in your body, you stand a good shot of having a good day.
Yeah, I think you call them genetically gifted.
Okay, that might be the word. Okay. But in cricket they're called flat track bullies, so I think maybe that's now the other thing. And I guess you're pretty happy about this, Tim, is that they've put in the nominations for men's and women's athlete of the year. So we're looking at the men first. We've got Neeraj Chopra, who I thought was a cricketer, but he's from India and he's been nominated for javelin. He's the world champion. We've got Ryan Krauser from the USA for shot put, same thing, world champion, world record holder. Mondo Duplantis from Sweden, pole vault, world champion, and Diamond League champion with the world record. We've got Kipton, of course, Kelvin Kipton, the new world record holder and the winner of London and Chicago. And we've got Noah Lyles in the USA 100, 200, world champion in both. So interesting mix, isn't it?
Go the marathoner.
Yeah. And then when you look at that, and I don't know how you can nominate a athletic champion out of 5 separate disciplines, but I guess they do, and there's some sort of point scoring system. Yes. I mean, of course, we would go for the marathoner because that's what we gravitate towards, but they must have something. So
there is a public voting process to get the top 6. And then after that, it comes down to World Athletics family members, whatever that means. And they then get to do the final nominations and voting for the final ones out of the top 6.
Yeah. And when you look at the women, we've got Femke Bol from the Netherlands, the 400 meter hurdle world champion. We've got Sherika Jackson from Jamaica, 100 meter, 200. We've got Faith Kipyegon from Kenya, 1,500, 5,000 meter world champion, world records. Yulimar Rojas from Venezuela at the triple jump. And I don't have the 5th there, Tim. Do you?
I do. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To Gista Sefa, who is the new women's world record holder in the marathon from Ethiopia, who ran and won the Berlin Marathon and smashed a new world record time of over 2 minutes. So 2 hours 11.
Yeah.
But there seems to be somebody missing from the list, Tony, somebody that...
I don't know how I missed a Sefa from the list. The amount of times that you've told everyone in the world that she is your favorite athlete at the moment. So how did I miss that? But yeah, Safan Hussein... Hisson is missing from the list, and at the end of the day, her world champion, she medaled, but it wasn't necessarily gold in every event. If she did, she'd be certainly on the list. But as I said, it's a short-term error because that lady's going to change the face of running as we know it. So
still got a long way to catch a Safa, though. That's 2 minutes on a marathon is huge to catch.
I don't think it is for Hassan, because she's just a racer, and I think no matter what you put in front of her, I think she's just one of those competitors that's just going to hang around, make some mistakes along the way, but hang around, and it'd be interesting, that sprint to the finish, if ever they raced each other. I don't know which way I'd go, because as we know, Asefa had some magic at the end of Berlin, where her speed just went up markedly in those last 2 or 3 kilometers. And you just love to see them race. That's what you're itching for,
Yeah, I just don't see it happening. I think if they race, they're taking prize money off each other. So I think you'll find they'll avoid each other and just be happy to keep winning races to get the big prize money.
Yeah,
it's a shame that that's what they do. I guess the other news of the week as well is the Queenstown Marathon. This one that I'm wearing on my shirt here, that people may be able to see, was run and won yesterday. I don't have the results. I haven't looked up the results. I've been a bit lazy there, but I do know people that ran it. They said it was very cold. It was 1 degree at the start line. But Queenstown is one of those absolute stunningly beautiful courses. The marathon starts out at Arrowtown. You run around through the lakes area of around Lake Hayes, and then you come down into Lake Wakatipu and run through there. We've done the marathon and the half marathon before. It is one of my favorite races of all time. And the good news is they've opened up race entries for anyone who wants to run it next year. The entries have gone online today as we speak. So you can get your early bird entries for Queenstown for next year. And it's a great destination marathon. It's a good way to end the year, have a holiday, go do your marathon, and then have a whole heap of South New Zealand wines and cheeses and food and venison and all the things Tara grew up on as a kid. But you can do that. It's just a fantastic experience and a great atmosphere and a really well-organised race.
Excellent. It should be on everyone's bucket list.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone that wants to do an overseas marathon or half marathon, highly recommend the Queenstown Marathon as your first, if that's what you want to be doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks, guys, for the news for the week. We're going to now talk about this week's episode, which is overcoming the dread of treadmill running. But before we start, Tony and Tim, what has your experience been like on running on treadmills? Now, Tony, I'm going to start with you because I know how much you really love the treadmill. Tell us why the treadmill and what has put you off it, I guess.
We used to have 2 treadmills here, and we would use them extensively. So I do have experience on the treadmills. And, at the end of the day, last week we talked about running in the heat. I'm seeing how Sharon's being affected already by the heat that's hit us so early. And, it's a really good segue from last week's episode to this one, because treadmill running in an air-conditioned gym or even in a garage that's got fans in it, is a much better option potentially than going out in the heat of the day. So it certainly makes sense to me. I just wish you the best of luck on this episode, because overcoming the dreaded treadmills is a really big title. And I know that you guys are regularly on the treadmill, and I know that you have got so many more tips and tricks than what I have. I used to watch NASCAR as we ran on the and I become a fan of NASCAR. Now you can imagine there's cars going around an oval track, and I'm running stationary. So so there's a little bit of bored. And funnily enough, I shared a meme today on our Instagram, the Flying Runner Instagram, and it was all about the time equivalent to running on a treadmill. And it was one of those old Star Trekky sort of themes. And they're saying, so you're telling me 1 year on the treadmill is like 7 years on real life? And I just thought, I've got to share that, because I knew the episode we were doing. So, look, it serves a purpose, and at this time of the year, it certainly makes sense. But I think we all prefer being able to get out there in really nice running conditions and see the world. And the treadmill's a great option at this time of the year. So,
and I think for me, I like treadmill running because it does break up the road running and pounding on the pavement. It is softer under your feet. It gives you a constant pace, and to a degree you can switch off. and you don't have to think, you don't have to go through the calculations on your watch and, how far have I gone? How far do I need to go? What time do I need to do it in? You're going to get there in a certain amount of time. It's all pre-programmed in, essentially based on the pace you're doing. So for us, I like that. For us, we use it as well for a bit of speed training during the week. So we'll do a faster session during the week, which we'll typically do on the treadmill.
Yeah.
And that helps us with our longer term training plan, which is, breaking up the run. So we're not always running at the same pace all the time. So treadmills have their place. Yes, they get a bit boring, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it's really, for us, it's a good way of maintaining a pace. It's a good way of training yourself to run at a certain pace. You don't have to keep looking at your watch. You don't have to keep trying to do the sums in your head because you know what pace you're running at. So it is a pretty good way of being able to learn to run at a particular pace and feel comfortable. And for us, that's what we've typically used it for over the years, is to break up a bit of that training. It's softer on the legs, so we don't feel we get as injured by doing it. And you can zone out, which is good.
I guess Tim and I are lucky. We're like you and Sharon. We've got a treadmill each next to each other. Our treadmills are set up with a thing called iFit, which iFit is, you can pre-pick your program and you can run wherever you want to in the world with a trainer. So we're quite lucky. So they'll talk you through tips and tricks. It's like having a personal trainer while you're running, and the treadmill will actually adjust to what they are doing as well. If you want them to, you can override that program. However, I'm very lucky because Tim is quite metronomic with his run and his cadence. So he consistently stays at the same pace, even on a treadmill. Whereas sometimes on a treadmill, I know when I run by myself, I sort of am a bit all over the place, I guess. Is that the best way to put it? But when I watch him next to me, I can hear his footsteps. So it keeps like a metronome for me, keeps my cadence going really well. He can run at like whatever speed he wants to. I can run at my speed and we can run together. So that's our bonuses as well.
Yeah, I think being all over the place, that's the technical term.
I think it's more the case that you're like, oh, I'll be at the front of the treadmill or I'll be at the back of the treadmill, or like I'll look sideways and something will happen and your footsteps go out of rhythm, or you're watching something and you're like, oh, I'll just speed up or slow down. Whereas even I think even if you don't have anything on your screen, if you listen to a audio book or if you listen to a podcast or you watch a movie, I'd probably recommend putting a metronome sort of noise on your phone, so that you can listen to that tick-tock, tick-tock to keep your footsteps going at that, just
180 beats per minute or 170
just
beats
to keep
per minute.
your feet going at the same pace.
I
find that helps me when I'm running by myself without Tim next to me.
And so when I was talking about running Kilimanjaro before, we were running on iFit. It was a live video of a trainer running the Kilimanjaro half marathon with other runners around him on the road. It felt like we were there. He was talking all the way through, giving tips and tricks. The treadmill would automatically go up. It would automatically go down. It's the same thing as what a Peloton does, or a Zwift, I think it is. Zwift does as well, where they have trainers out there. It's live video, and it makes it a bit more exciting and a bit more interesting to run. But yeah, it's an interesting process, I guess. Do we want to talk about ways to make it a bit more fun?
Yeah, absolutely. I think,
why not?
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave this to you. And one of the interesting things that when you're talking about that metronome sort of a thing, I have had comment that our introductory music that we use on the podcast has that effect on people. So it just gets them into, it's got that beat that sort of can coincide with our. So maybe we need to put out an extended play of just our intro music. So
just for people for the treadmill run.
Just on Spotify on a loop.
Just get it in that subliminal messages.
So they just get this constant beat in their head of this music, and it becomes an earworm, and it just destroys them over time. So I'm going to kick things off. So they are a great tool, treadmills, to help you recover from injury. It gives you the ability to find a slow, consistent pace on an even surface that you can trust. Okay, you go running on the road, there's going to be uneven sections. It's going to have camphor on on the road or the pavement.
Or gutters that you can fall down and break your ankle.
Yeah, all those sort of things. So if you are recovering from injury, like you will be shortly, Tony, it's probably a good way to start off. You've got handrails beside you. If it gets too hard, you can step off onto the sideboards. But it's a nice, even pace on a softer surface that helps you. So it's good in that sense. But what you got to do, as I said before, is you treat it a little bit different from your normal runs. You can use it as an attack session, essentially, a session where you go out to try and go a bit faster. So you can do your sprints, you can do your fartleks, you can just gradually increase the pace, and we do that quite often. We'll run, 1 or 2 kilometers at a certain pace, then we'll up it, and we sort of pyramid it up and then pyramid it down on the treadmill over a couple of kilometers each time. And it's a good way to gradually improve that pace, especially on a fairly consistent surface. The other trick to treadmills is getting to understand the programs that are built into the machine. A lot of people get onto a treadmill and just push start, put it onto 10 or 12 or 15 kilometers per hour, 6, 5 or 4-minute pace, and then just run at that even pace. But if you push the programs, there's a lot of programs built into them that have got incline, they've got sprints built into it, or faster sections built into it.
And you can actually pre-program a lot of them yourself with your own programs. So they're pretty cool in that sense, and being able to understand the buttons and understand the programs can help you use it for that advantage to change your program, your weekly running program as well. I know I use mine a lot for sprints. I do like to do my sprints on the treadmill. I find it's just consistent. It just will, I don't have to think, okay, 20 minutes or 20 seconds time, I've got to start sprinting. It just does it for me. So I don't have to think. It's like, okay, I've got to speed up the legs, but that's as far as I have to think. So,
and I guess the other one, when you can treat it a bit different, particularly if you're running with somebody in a gym situation where there's other people around you running on a treadmill, or even like Tara and I do, as Tara sort of mentioned, she runs at my sort of turnover of the legs. If you're running with somebody beside you, whether it's at the gym or home, you can use it as a bit of an internal competition. Can you run faster? Can you run further than the person next to you on the treadmill? They have no idea you're doing it. They're probably doing it to you as well. Everyone's got that little bit of competition inside of them. And I've done it, particularly when I've been at gyms in the past. I get next to somebody and I'll just gradually pick up the pace slowly so the person doesn't know I'm competing against them. But it's a good way just to run a little bit different, treat it almost like a race, and give you that competition as well. So there's some basic, I guess, tips to get going with it. As I said before, they're good for sort of also replicating some of the courses you might run. So I know with iFit, they've got the London Marathon course on there. They've got Boston, they've got Chicago and New York Marathon courses on there. They've got thousands of other courses on there, like, as I said, the Kilimanjaro Marathon, half marathon that we ran today. But they're good for replicating it. So some treadmills have that ability to create maps on your course. So like I know our treadmills, we can actually go on there and it's like a Google Earth map where we can plot out the course we want to run, and we can even run around our local streets here on our treadmill, and it will identify on the Google Maps the elevation at each of the points we've identified, and then automatically adjust the treadmill for that.
Wow.
And then put up street view images of the streets you're running on. So it's some of the treadmills have got that capability, not all, but as Tara said, you can program some of the machines with those courses in them. And I know you can get GPS files that you can download that you can upload into machines and things like that if you've got the right machines as well of courses that you've run. So they are pretty good. There are people out there that, as I said before, even I do it as well, use it just as a time to zone out. So you can just cover the screen and not even look at the screen and the numbers ticking over. You can just focus on other things. You can listen to this podcast, which I know some people do. I know Nigel, one of our running friends, gets on the treadmill and listens to this podcast and watches it on YouTube or whatever. I know other people watch YouTube videos. I know people watch running videos. There's a lot of people that run marathons and half marathons, and they have a point of view camera of the course as they're running it. And then they put that on while they're running their course. So when they're running, they picture themselves running on that marathon course or half marathon course as well. So it makes it a bit more fun And YouTube's got thousands of point of view videos of people running courses. So
so it doesn't always have to be running either. I know a few people that have got like boards that go across their arms of their treadmill. They'll put their laptop there and they'll just walk on the treadmill and do their work while they're walking on the treadmill. So they can actually, get some exercise in and do their work at the same time, especially if they'll work from home people or they're trying to write a report or something like that. And they'd like to just be able to get some exercise in at the same time. So you can actually just do your work, put the little board over the arms, still type away, but you're walking at the same time. So you can actually use it quite productively at the same time.
I don't think I'll work and walk at the same time, but I know some people do that.
There's a lot of people that do that, and our treadmills have actually got boards that you can buy that fit onto the arms if you would like to. They don't slide off and everything. Yeah.
Good luck to those people, I'd say. Good luck.
Yeah, there are some good things. Of course, there's always Netflix and Stan and all those sort of streaming services that you can put on and tune out and watch a TV show. And it's amazing how quickly half an hour or an hour goes when you're watching a TV show when you're running. And you're not looking at the distance and time. So, and I guess the other good thing is hill running. It gives you an opportunity to practice your hill running without having to go out onto the hills. You can get yourself fit and strengthened up on the treadmill running up hills before you go out there. And I know Tara and I, we've talked about it. We've got Boston as our next marathon. We know it's quite hilly, so we'll introduce a little bit of hill training in our treadmill runs, just to give us that initial kickstart. And then obviously once we get full on into our training, we'll do a little bit out on the road as well. Remembering treadmills don't substitute roads. There is a difference between road running and treadmill running. We find treadmill running is somewhat easier because it is a metronomic, even pace. You don't think about it. Your legs switch off. The road heavier pounding on the legs, and you've got other things to deal with. But you can introduce those things gradually and build up your strength as well. Yeah. And then obviously, when you are running towards the end of it, we always do this. Even today, we got to the end of our run, and we just slowed it right down and just walked the last sort of 10 minutes just to help us with recovery and remove the lactic acid out of our bodies. We use it on a Tuesday morning as well after we do our long runs on a Sunday. We use it as a Tuesday morning slow run. It stops us wanting to push further or faster, as you typically do, that internal competition. Again, when you go for a run on the road or somewhere else, you'll typically go, oh, shit, I was only wanting to run at 6 minute pace, and before you know it, you're running at 4:50 pace or something like that because you feel too good. Whereas the treadmill will actually help slow you down a little bit and give you that. And the other good thing is when you're doing that, or even when you're running, you can learn how to do things like breathe better. So you can practice your breathing a lot better, taking 10 short, sharp breaths every, a couple of minutes, just to practice your breathing and make sure you're getting that rhythmic breathing that you should get when you're running, practicing it. So, yeah, so they're sort of my key tips at the moment, I guess, for what we find when we're running and what is good practice, I guess, to try and take the dread out of the treadmill. It's still running in a school. It's still, you feel trapped in a cage at times when you're on there. But if you can make it a little bit less trapped and more with a purpose and go into the session with a running purpose, it's good. You're going to have boring sessions on the road as well. So, if you can go in with a purpose and say, this is what I'm running this course today to do on this treadmill session. I'm going out there to do a little bit faster, to pick up my pace and get comfortable running at that pace. And I want to focus the next month at running faster. It will help.
Sorry, Tony.
Oh, no, you go.
I was just going to say, I always look at the positives. There is some days like this morning, I'm sitting there going, do I run outside or do I run on the treadmill? And now I've always done my long runs outside. I have done up to probably about an hour or hour and a half or so on the treadmill before, but I've never done the distance that we've done today on the treadmill. I didn't actually find it that boring. I was actually grateful to be out of the heat and out of the sun. I was grateful to have a fan and I was grateful to have water. And there was, obviously you've got your own facility. So you're not going, oh, I've got to, wait until the next toilet stop or anything like that. It's like, oh, I'll just, you can go when you need to go. You also have that ability to get water when you need to. If you just want to have a little bit of a break, you can. Not that we really had a break today, but, you can be out of other people's eyes if you're feeling a bit like you don't really want to be running in front of other people as well. And like, how Kay was saying when she first started running, it's probably a good way to start running because you're not having prying eyes looking at you if you're not comfortable doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, I hadn't thought of the treadmill as a recovery process, but it makes sense. And so you've actually started to get me to think about it, because going straight onto hard roads with a dodgy ankle may not be the best strategy. And I'm already facing a bit of a mindset challenge because I want to catch up to where Sharon is on her 16-week plan. But I won't be there. I won't be running again for at least another 3 weeks. So it's one thing. So I'm going to have a mindset challenge, and then to go out and attack it on the roads immediately presents the challenge, the potential of getting hurt again. And I really don't want to have that. We've just got too short a time frame. So I hadn't thought about that. The other thing I thought about as you were talking, Tim, was you've already run Boston. And it would be interesting with Boston being your next race, because to me, there's no other course and no other challenge in world running than the Newton Hills at the 25K mark of the Boston Marathon. And that would be a good way. And no matter what we did, like we looked at elevations, and we chose a hill that we thought was the elevation of Heartbreak Hill. And it probably was the elevation of Heartbreak Hill, but Heartbreak Hill is the third or the fourth hill in the Newton Hill. So that's the thing that we found really hard to replicate. And I guess having a treadmill with that iFit program where you can run Boston, even if you're not going to do the full course, but you'd maybe do your 30K long run, you're going to get those hills right at the end of it. So I think that would be a huge benefit for people who are thinking about how to structure their run for Boston, because it is a different course. It's downhill for the first 5 to 10K. It's predominantly a downhill course, which makes the entire course almost a net game course. So
it is a net game, so it doesn't count for world records.
Yeah, so then you're looking at, you're coming downhill, which presents its own challenges because people tend to go too fast.
Yep.
And then you're at the 25K mark. Whoever decided to put the Newton Hills in there just deserves to be punished in whatever way that we would deem fit. But that's 25K into a marathon, and you're saying, okay, now I've got the next 10K predominantly of hills. So it really is a challenge. So the treadmill would certainly be a benefit for that.
And the iFit program for the Boston, New York, and London and Chicago marathons is actually broken up into four or five episodes.
Yeah.
So you can just do the section there, as you say, for the Newton Hills to practice the Newton Hills.
Yeah.
But you can also go back to the start and just push start and then run through the first section, jump into the section straight away, do that, jump into the third section, and do the Newton Hills with your training. So you can practice it in different ways as well. And having done London Marathon before we went over and ran London, and we only did London probably 5 months or 6 months before we went over and ran the actual course. It was very true. And felt like when we were running, it was like, we've been here. We know this course. We know this section of the course. We feel familiar here because we've already done it once before. Now, it didn't give away all the secrets. We still got these lovely memories of our running in London, but it was nice because the course itself, when we're running, it was run with Casey Gilbert. And he was one of the trainers there, and he's talking to you about what he was feeling at the time. So it was really his run, and we were training ourselves through that run. But it helped us know what was sort of what we needed to expect when we did it. So, as I said, we know what is coming up in Boston. We know what's coming up in Chicago, and we know what's coming up in New York because they're the ones we're doing next year. We've already run those, 6 or 7 months ago and 8 months ago. So we have some idea of what they are. We'll probably have a practice run on Boston again before we go over there. But again, we don't want to go and practice every week on the course because
you've got to leave something to for the real day too.
Yeah,
so I probably won't go back onto those courses again on iFit, only because I want to actually experience it again and in a fresh mind, I
Yeah.
might do it afterwards
Yeah.
rather than before, only because then it's like, oh, yeah, I remember running this part of it or whatever. I'd rather not do it again before. That's just my personal experience. So,
Yeah. But I highly recommend it when you do get back into running. It will be good for your ankle to have a surface to run on, and it'll give you that purpose where you can set a pace and just can practice that pace, and you can run, walk, and you can set your intervals up on your treadmill so that it actually will run for 3 minutes, walk for 1 minute or 2 minutes, just to give you that starting practice that you need before you can then extend it out or whatever you need to do.
Yeah, so I've just changed the scrolling ticker down the bottom from wishing you good luck to taking the dread out of treadmills to asking the question, did you do it? Because I think you've changed a little bit of my thinking in relation to running on a treadmill. So you've now got me thinking, okay, I need to go down to Good Life, and I need to I'd love a sponsor, Good Life, but no. I need to go down to a gym that's close by and probably set something up for the next couple of months. So.
Yeah, no matter which way you look at it, a treadmill is not going to replicate being outside in the road. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not going to give you the same sort of feeling. It is not going to give you the same environment, and it is certainly not going to give you the same scenery.
Yeah.
However, they do have a good purpose. I know myself, I can get a lot of speed. If I want to work for speed, that's how I work for my speed. They do have a really good purpose. And for me today, it was nice to be out of that heat. It was nice not to have the sun beating down on me. So if you look at the positives rather than the negatives of the treadmill, there is some really good positives.
Yeah.
Hey, just a question on shoes. Do you wear the same shoes you run on the road with on a treadmill, or is that something that you do, or is there advice around that of what people should be doing?
So you can use the same shoes, absolutely. Road shoes, treadmill shoes, all exactly the same. I tend to actually wear my road shoes to a point where I'm like at around about 550 kilometers in my road shoes, and then they get put into my treadmill shoes. Because the treadmill's got more supportiveness in that decking and stuff like that, I'm then not wasting those little bit of extra, and then I can rotate the shoes around. That's how I personally do it. That's not needed though. You can just intermingle whatever you want to do.
As the foam starts to deteriorate, you can then get extra life out of it because you're not hurting yourself. Like today, I've had a rolled ankle as well. It comes out puffy normally after I run on the road. Today, after running, I haven't had that puffy ankle come up. It's doing good. So the shoes get less absorbed. They don't need as much sponginess. So if they're an older shoe, I would wear the older shoes on the treadmill, exactly as Tara says.
Excellent.
But I wouldn't wear your super shoe, carbon fiber plated shoes on the treadmill.
No, you've got enough. The treadmill supports and helps you out a lot more anyway. I find that running on the treadmill is so much easier. I actually can just keep that same consistent pace, and I can quite happily sit at 10, 11 kilometers an hour for 1Ks. If I tried to do that outside on the road, I'd be like, I've got to stop. And so there is the benefits, there is negatives. So
it certainly sounds like there's a lot of benefits. And just changing this topic ever so slightly at the moment, of course, we're just about to see, well, some stores and some brands have already started their Black Friday sales. So we know how expensive running shoes are. So if any of the listeners are out there at the moment and they're in need of some new pairs, now's probably a good time to go out and have a look. I know Brooks have got theirs starting on my birthday, which is Monday, which you're going to have very limited time when this podcast comes out. I know Saucony have got their Black Friday sales already up. The Running Warehouse is the same. So if you're looking for shoes, now is certainly the time, because they do say that 2024 is going to be a massive year for shoe releases. So if you are happy in the shoes that you're in, now is probably the good time to build up a bit of a stockpile. So
agree. Yeah, and we'll try and do an episode in the coming weeks around shoes, I guess, as well.
Yeah, help make them affordable.
Yes.
And we all have our strategies, and I loved your little comment when I took a photo of the moon boot and posted it to get my sympathy votes on Facebook, and all you said is, I can see your Saucony stockpile or something. Yep.
So, Tony, I guess, look, we've got a little bit of extra time up our sleeves this week.
Yeah.
What got you into running? We'll talk a little bit about ourselves. We talked a little bit last week as well. What got you into running and why?
Okay. Now, we did pass over, Tim, before we go into that little segment about the world marathon records on a treadmill. I can see that on the run sheet.
So sorry. That was my
Tara, fault. See, you're just pushing forward. You're just...
she's gone to sleep on the treadmill.
All right, let's talk about the marathon
records.
World records. So we do have some records, and there's people out there that actually run marathons on treadmills. So the men's is a guy called Tyler Andrews, and he's from USA. His time is 2 hours, 17 minutes and 56 seconds. And the woman's record she's also from the USA, Renee Metiva. 2 hours and 40 minutes 55. So
it's crazy.
Look, I guess go for it. If you want to run a full marathon, we were crazy enough to run a half marathon this morning, so why not step it up to the full marathon?
Yeah. Every time I hear the thought of running a marathon on a treadmill, I think of those treadmills set at the speed of Kipchoge or Kipton, and to see how long you can keep up with them.
Oh, the ones that are at the world majors.
Yeah. And it is just, I shouldn't laugh, but it's so funny to see people, they can keep up with it for about a minute or two, or, a little bit longer if you're an accomplished athlete, but ultimately you hit the deck, and I think it's just a tad dangerous. But anyway, that's what I always
marathon.
That's what I think of when we think of marathons on a treadmill. So the question you asked me, Tara, was, how did I get into running?
Yes.
And why? Well, I'll be completely 3,000% honest. I didn't get into running. Sharon got into running, and I sort of tagged along. So Sharon was inspired by a lady at work who is probably, I'm going back, where are we now? 2023, probably 6-7 years ago, I'd say. And I was never a runner at school. I did cross country, and I had a little bit of success, or not a great deal of success, maybe a little bit of success with that at school. But I was more a team sport player, and I could, I was relatively fit, but didn't particularly like running. So when Sharon started running, because she was inspired by this 60-year-old at work who was running marathons, so she got inspired. And then when we went overseas, she would always get me to film a little segment of her, like running over the Golden Gate Bridge or running somewhere iconic in New York, and was sending them through to the lady and that inspired her. And so and I thought that was going to be about it. And then we've got family in New York, and we did a couple of 10K fun runs. I didn't train for them, and they were always really painful and stiff for the next 2 or 3 days after. But I never thought, well, maybe I should train for them. I'd just do the fun runners and try and get through it as best as possible. So it wasn't a regular thing. And Sharon we've got family in New York, and my niece sent me and Sharon some video of the crowds at the New York Marathon, because where they lived in Williamsburg or Greenpoint, more Greenpoint than Williamsburg, the crowds were amazing. So, and they were just one street away from it, so it wasn't like they had to travel far to see it. So they just walked down, took some video, and Sharon looked at me that day. She said, "Do you want to run the New York City Marathon?" I said, "Yeah, right." She missed the sarcasm, and and all she heard was "yes, right." And so next minute I knew, probably 2 weeks later, she said, "Well, we're booked. We're going with a company called Traveling Fit. we've got guaranteed registration into New York. And by this time I was just saying, what are you talking about? And that's when I realized that probably I would need to train, because if I was pained after a 10K race, and you should see some of those photos from those 10K races, I looked horrendous. But so we started training, and that's what got me into running. So what about Tim? What about Tim?
I guess I've always been sporty my whole life. I played a lot of team sport as a kid, but I was also a pretty gifted swimmer in the pool. I'd compete at state level championships. And then in the surf, I used to be a surf lifesaver and compete at a national level and win national championships as a surf lifesaver as a kid. And then I guess part of that was I would go and, it was compulsory to do the school cross country. It was compulsory at school athletics day to run some runs. So cross country, I'd turn up against, the whole year of kids, and there'd be kids there that did little athletics and a whole heap of other running activities. And I would rock up and somehow snag a top 3 place. And I think it was just my fitness and endurance that I had, and qualify for school cross country teams and school 800 meter teams on the track, without any real training, without any real experience in running. And I didn't enjoy it that much, but I seemed to do okay with it. And then I guess after school, I found alcohol, I found mates, I found going out night clubbing and, chasing Tara and all sorts of other things. So
all the fun stuff.
Yeah, sport becomes sort of secondary in my life. And it was only, I guess, later on after we had the kids, we found parkrun. Tara found it first and did it a few times, and then dragged myself and the kids along. And I couldn't even run the first kilometre at parkrun. But within about, 18 months of starting parkrun, we were signed up and doing our first half marathon down the Gold Coast. And I loved it so much that we signed up for another one, 4 months later in Auckland in the half marathon there. And that was the first of our overseas running travel trips, I guess. And that's what got me excited, was the adventures this thing could take you on as runners. So that's what really got me into running. How about you, Tara?
Oh, mine's a completely different story to both of you guys. I grew up not as sporty as you guys, played netball, did all the rest of that sort of stuff. But I grew up in a small country town in the country. So our sport was sort of chasing the animals from one pen to another pen to make sure that they were, where they needed to be. But I started going to gym after the kids were born, mainly just to keep the fitness going and everything like that. Have some time to myself. And started doing Tough Mudders and Spartans and all of those sort of obstacle racing courses. I unfortunately had quite a bad obstacle racing accident on one of the obstacle races where the rope snapped. So the traverse rope actually snapped while I was on it, and there was no full protection underneath. And so I fractured my back, my hip, and my pelvis. Sorry. And once that happened, and it took a long time for me I had started doing parkrun before that, and that was mainly just to get the speed up in between the obstacles, because you've got to run between each obstacle. One of the specialists actually said to me during all the rehab and stuff like that was, well, I hope you don't ever plan on running again or doing any obstacle racing again, because I've lost a lot of feeling in my left side. They said to me straight out, you'll never run again. You're lucky to be walking, and that leg will never carry you more than half a kilometre.
Wow.
So the first thing that I did is I actually went out the very next day and signed up for a half marathon just to prove them wrong.
Stubborn. the mindset of a marathoner.
Yeah.
So I'm injured, I can keep running.
So that was actually 9 years ago, probably last week or the week before, maybe. So it was 9 years ago that all happened. And my first half marathon was Gold Coast the following year. And look, there's still a lot of rehab that goes into it. There's still a lot of physio that goes into it. And there's still a lot of injections into the spine and, management that happens to make sure that I can keep running. But as long as I can keep running, I will keep running. So yeah, that's my journey is to starting is just being stubborn.
Just to stick it up a doctor.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, and I didn't know that full story, Tara. So that's pretty inspirational as well. But just obviously in the mode of nostalgic school memories, as I've been in over the last 24 hours, it's and as Tim was talking about, podiuming for races at high school, I was thinking there was a 400-meter race around, and our track at school was a 400-meter track, and there was a guy there called Rodney Carter who I could never beat in anything. Right, he was a good footballer, just one of those naturally gifted guys, and in grade 12, I said, I'm going to beat him in the 400. And I remember this race so vividly. I went out so hard and so fast, and I was flogging him. And I'm thinking as I'm coming into that final stretch, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then my legs felt like they'd been suddenly 3 times as heavy as what they were. And it was like I was in slow motion as the field just swamped me. And I didn't beat Rod. So Rod, it's just amazing, isn't it? So
yeah.
All right.
Alrighty. So I guess we're up to Tim's tricks and tips. Please make it short so we can put this on an Instagram post.
Yeah, it's easy, this one. So I talked about it last week as my tip when we we're going through the Fast 6 questions.
Yeah.
It's about running up hills and my tip for running up hills. So I talked about it a little bit. I just want to expand on it a bit more. So last week and I guess last week I talked about it, but one trick I've learned about running up hills, most people tend to look down at the ground and focus on pushing with their legs up the hills. I've learned over the years that you don't worry about your legs, you actually worry about your arms. If you swing your arms, and particularly if you swing them in a very short cycle back and forward and a little bit of a punching motion where you're sort of punching at a punching bag in front of you, your legs will naturally then start to shorten the stride down, take smaller steps to get up the hill, and the arms sort of do the work and they build the momentum for the legs.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, you focus on your breathing and you make your breathing work around your arm cycles. And before you're actually up the hill. The hardest bit is running without arms, right? So if you're running on the flat or on a treadmill, try running with your arms pinned beside you. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't work. Your arms naturally do all the work when you're running. So when you are running, particularly up hills, focus on your arms. It's a different way to think, but it actually works really well.
Yeah, that's actually a really good tip. I read that this morning as I was doing a bit of prep for the show, and I thought, geez, Tim, that's actually a really good tip. And because I'd never thought of it before. And interestingly, you say that because Joel Etherington or Edgerton, the IMP runner.
Oh yeah, Etherington. Yep.
Yeah, he posted some shots of him in New York, and I know we're getting him back in the not too distant future, but there's a couple of shots where his left arm is just hanging at the side. So I'm interested to find out, because it wasn't just the one shot. There was 2 or 3 in there where the left's just hanging. Yeah. And so I'm actually interested to find out what happened there, because his time was, what was it, 3:50?
Something like that, yep.
Yeah, so he ran a great time. And if he's done some of that with a dodgy left arm that's gone numb or asleep on him, it's an outstanding effort. So very, very interesting.
It's almost impossible to run at a reasonable pace if you have your arms pinned beside you.
Yeah, I'd believe it. And you'd lose your balance as well, I reckon. So
yeah. So as I say, just short little punching movements, just like you're punching a little boxing bag with your arms as you're going up. Focus on your breathing as you're doing that, and your legs will follow. You don't need to look down at your legs.
Yep.
Great tip.
Excellent. So we are starting to get to the end of this episode, but before we do, Tony, what's happening next week?
Well, next week's another Sunday record for us. I think it's at 6:00 in the morning, so I don't know how that's going to fit in with your long run, Tim and Tara, but We've got the great pleasure of welcoming our very first overseas guest onto the podcast, and this is Team Kerr. They're an amazing running family from County Down in Northern Ireland, and really it is going to be a episode not to be missed, because there's Dad David, Mum Sandra, and their main man Aaron, who's their son. And now Aaron was born with chronic renal failure, which resulted in a kidney transplant at the age of 13. And some of these stories they are just so inspirational, how people overcome the odds that they're given. And Aaron received his kidney from Dad David, which is just amazing, as well as his kidney condition. Aaron has been diagnosed with cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and a chromosome disorder. So he's a full-time wheelchair user, as well as being non-verbal. So you can just imagine the challenges that family has just in living life, but they're a running family. So it's going to be amazing. It's a special story of inclusion, and it's certainly one not to be missed. So if you're looking for inspiration as we build into the year 2024 and everything that you've got planned in it, this might be the spark that you need to really set some challenging goals. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. Absolutely, and
they're good friends with the main man in Eliud Kipchoge. They've actually met him and had a good chat to him. So
yeah,
we'll hear about
really,
that.
really lovely family. I'm so looking forward to this. It's really good. So thanks for that, Tony. I can't wait to catch up with David, Sandra, and of course Aaron next week. So on that note, this ends the show. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode of The Flying Runner, and you didn't feel too much like a hamster in a wheel. Oh my God, I really need to read these things beforehand. That is terrible, Tim. Thank you. If you did enjoy the podcast, please like and subscribe wherever you've listened and watched this episode. Video of this episode will be available at Spotify and YouTube, and audio will be on Apple, Amazon, and Google Podcasts, and most other popular podcast platforms. Remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Until then, happy running.
Happy running.
Happy running.
See you, Tony.
Oh, Tim.
I'm not letting you do